Most of the time, our stakeholders on projects are asking two very important questions. How long will things take, and how much will they cost? Well, those are difficult questions to answer, so I thought maybe I would make a game of it. Hi there, I'm Ashley Hunt, Senior Project Management Instructor here at Storm and Epic Live, and I thought in this particular tip and trick video, I'd give you some really cool ways of estimating, but also a different way of looking at estimating durations of time. So I am going to take a look at the game of estimating, literally, and it's going to be based on Agile, Scrum, really, but Agile methodologies and how estimating is looked at differently from, say, other project management methodologies where you're saying, this is how long it's going to take, 5 days. Well, let's look at things a little bit differently. How often do you come in on time? Not a lot of projects finish on schedule. So maybe we need to take a different look at things. And as a self-directing team, maybe we can take scope of work, or in the Scrum environment, a user story. Here's what I need. Software that types, spell checks, and prints. You're like, okay, let's take a look at that user story and figure out the degree of difficulty or work effort involved in that. So we're not going to put a time on it. We're going to use it relative to the size of the amount of work that we're trying to accomplish so that we can determine our velocity or the amount of work that we can get done in a sprint. That could be a month, that could be 2 weeks, it just depends. So you can use a scalable model to do this. Some teams will use a 1 through 10 dynamic. Other teams will use what are called t-shirt sizes, where you've got, small, medium, large, extra large. And you say, well, we can do an extra large piece in one sprint, and then we can do a small and a medium piece of work as we determine what that is in another sprint. The most common, though, is what's called a modified Fibonacci sequence. And you can see the numbers here, the Fibonacci sequence, the 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. Some people use 100. Some people go to infinity. It really just depends on which scalable model is going to work best for your team. Size, as humans, size is easier to compute than time, and essentially is way more accurate. So let's take a look at the modified Fibonacci sequence and play a little poker. Poker is one of the ways that we can estimate time, reach consensus as a team, and figure out how much work we can actually accomplish. So what you're looking at here is poker game that's designed for Scrum estimates. And you'll notice that it goes from 1 all the way up to infinity. Well, what we have to do as a self-directing team is sit around a table and triangulate some of the work and get an idea about what that looks like. Is it a 1? Is it an 8? And then once we have that, we can all sit down as a team and play a little poker. And that way we're reaching consensus, almost like a Delphi method where we're reaching consensus, but we're engaging in conversation to prove why we think something's an 8 when somebody else thinks maybe it's a 2. So let's just use size. Let's just use animals so you can see how this works. Very first thing we're going to do with our team is triangulate. We're going to say, okay, an elephant is 21. Anything that's elephant-sized work, we're going to call that a 21. Now, a little puppy, we'll call that an 8, kind of a medium-sized piece of work. And this ant here, that's a 1. And so if we apply that to the amount of work that needs to be accomplished based on the user story or scope of work, then we can really get an idea of what the triangulation is. Now, every other piece of work that we look at, we know what the maximum is, we know what the middle is, and we know what the lowest is. Now, everything else that we look at, we can use that scalable model in order to estimate work. So let's play poker. Let's see, your team is sitting around. You're like, all right, we've all collaborated and agree that an elephant is 21 and an ant is 1. But let's take a look at some of the other things that we need to get accomplished. Look at this little itty bitty teeny tiny kitten. Well, we're going to play poker and we're going to say that's a 3. We all agree. The gopher is a 5. Okay, we all agree. The lion is a 13. Oh, but wait, somebody thinks it's a 34. Well, guess what we do? We have a conversation and we ask that person, why do you think that this is a 34? And they say, from a programming side, I've got this, I've got that, there's a lot of risk, it's just more work than what you all think it is. And the team will say, okay, but if you look at it from this perspective, the majority reaching consensus agrees that this is a 13. And so they'll have a conversation and discuss it. And the other person will say, okay, well, I agree. We're going to call this a 13 for the lion. The thing about poker is that everybody's going to keep their score down until everybody flips it over at the same exact time. And if we have to go through it a couple times to reach consensus, then we will do so. But when all is said and done, we as a team can figure out, based on poker, what kind of work we can accomplish in a sprint. We'll use the scores to determine how many points or velocity that we can achieve in a sprint. We've already decided as a team that the elephant is the largest piece of work. It's 21 points. That's our maximum velocity for a sprint. That's all we can accomplish. And the elephant is priority. So we're going to start with that. And we're going to achieve the 21 points. Then we're going to look at the next sprint. We're going to say, what can we accomplish in the next sprint? Well, based on the amount of points that we currently have, we can go up to 18. Now, it's not quite 21, but we can at least get 18 points accomplished, and then maybe some backlog work if we need to. Sprint 3, we're going to wrap up everything, and we're going to do 12 points, and the rest of the time, we're going to focus on any tech debt from anything else that we've produced, any support, anything that we need to update, bug fixes, and so on. This way of allocating or scoring our time, if a customer says, how long is it going to take for all of this to be accomplished? You can say 3 months. And you've got a duration that you can answer that question. But you also have something that's realistic as far as time is concerned and allows you and your team to dictate really and allocate the amount of work that you can actually accomplish in a sprint. One sprint typically equals 1 month. So we're trying to figure out how much work we can accomplish in 1 month without overworking. And we also want to make sure that we're producing something viable at the end of each sprint for the customer. So we're going to use expert opinions. We're going to communicate as a team. We're going to reach consensus. We're going to attempt to do that. That's why we triangulate, discuss, maybe a little analysis paralysis until we get to the point where we can play poker and start scoring out the work that needs to be done. We're going to get way more accurate estimates, and it is adaptable. We can adapt, we can adjust, we can move things and change things around. The product owner can pull other things from the backlog to fill in the gaps, but our maximum velocity at this point is 21 points per sprint. So based on velocity, that's determined by the team, by the way, and based on the definition of done, we can more accurately estimate, and we can have a little fun doing it. So consider going out and playing poker. There are actually software programs, web pages, all sorts of things where you can get them, or you can create the cards yourselves and have a little bit of fun playing poker and at the same time meeting your scheduled deadlines. Thanks, everybody. Hope it helped.